G'day and welcome to Runnez Radio. A little bit of a collab one. I just got off this great man's show and he's an absolute ripper. Now I'm going to interview him because he has got an absolute wealth of knowledge and experiences to share with you all. Liam O'Donnell is a mental wellbeing and I guess mental health coach. And how else would you describe yourself, great man?
Mate, you're pretty close. Mindset, mental wellbeing coach, speaker, facilitator. I don't get too held up on, the titles. Just more interested in the work that I do, trying to have an impact, and create content as well. So I'm a big content creator. But mate, you can just call me Liam. That's all that really matters for now.
Well, I love you and thank you, mate. Thanks for coming down. And we've only known each other a few weeks. We had a coffee a few weeks back and Liam's come down to our Cheltenham studio here. And look, he's just an inspiring dude. Since I met him, I've done a lot of reading and listening to a lot of his content, and he's an absolute prolific content provider on his podcast, which is
Braintainment, that's the one.
Podcast. So we'll obviously put links to that, and I think this might even be on there. His YouTube channel, which is Liam O'Donnell.
Just Liam O'Donnell.
But there's lots of Instagrams. But Braintainment's a great show. So I recommend anybody listening to that, because the thing about Braintainment is you get a good idea of Liam's personality, his authentic self. He's really he leaves no stone unturned to give you guys the best, I guess, content and just, I guess it's really, really valuable. I don't like listening to podcasts if I'm going to be just having to wait 30, 40 minutes for the gold. Like Liam just goes straight to the point, bang, 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 and it's really cool. So if you're a big listener of podcasts and like self-development, then Liam is your man. Now,
appreciate that, brother.
No, you are.
I'm looking around thinking, who's he talking about?
It's you. It's no one behind you.
Right, okay.
I promise you, I'm talking all about
mate,
you.
you can keep going if you like.
Mate, and the thing is, that's all off the top of my head.
No, you can't.
I do love it, and you have interviewed some amazing guests on that show, but I like the ones sometimes where it's just 15 minutes of you, just you talking, and again, back to the authentic self. And I think if anyone knows this show, or Runnez Radio, or just Runners, or whatever we do, Red Zone, it's a lot of our values do align. And I loved a lot of the values, but I guess what are you doing in this current state, the last 12 months or 12 months, and then I'll get you to take us back to where it all began, and then we'll get into some of the gold.
Mate, sounds good. Well, firstly, appreciate you coming out the time to do this with me. It's amazing to be in this studio. Obviously, we just had a chat earlier as well, so I'm excited to reconnect, and you touched on it already, Rick, but a lot of our values align, which is cool. I like your approach as well, having that personality influenced in the work that you do. It's a big part for me, and that authenticity coming through. So, mate, it's bloody awesome to have this time to have a powwow together in the flesh. Mate, it's been a whirlwind, but I'll give you the highlights real anyway. Certainly the last, say, year or so. So a lot of the work that I do now is I do some one-on-one coaching stuff with people, and I also do some talks for workplaces, schools, and sports clubs. Do a lot of stuff with footy clubs, just given my background, playing footy and in the sports community. And a lot of that stuff is in large part around mental health. I've had my own journey, which I'm sure we'll get to pretty shortly. I've had a lot of highs, a lot of lows. I know a lot of people can relate to that. The stats alone don't lie. The rates of mental health issues, certainly in the last few years, are really alarming within Australia. It's pretty funny. We consider ourselves such a laid-back country. I think we're actually the second most medicated country in the world for mental health issues. So there's obviously some work to be done there, and I've had my own journey. So I do some coaching with people around improving their well-being and how they feel on a daily basis, how they see themselves. We can unpack that a bit more soon. I do some talks, like I said, for groups of people around mental health, and also just how to build an empowering mindset, which is, sounds very abstract. A lot of the times, when I'm talking about my work, a bit nervous about it just sounding too ethereal or too kind of abstract. But ultimately, for me, having gone through, really debilitating depression for a period of time, really struggling with crippling anxiety for a period of time, we'll unpack that more soon. I've come out the other end of that, far from perfect. At the end of the day, we're all human beings, but feeling dramatically better. And I now know how bad it can get. Even when things on paper should line up to feeling really good, I know how bad it can get. And I guess kind of the juice of what I want excited to share with your audience today is I know how much that can change. You can completely fucking rewrite the script. You can feel dramatically different. So for anyone tuning in that's maybe struggling right now, it is unfathomable how much you can improve how you feel. Okay, and we'll sort of talk about my strategies and things that I find useful in a moment as well. But mate, a bit of a roundabout way of saying coaching and talks that I provide, knowing the impact that the right information and the right consistency can have. And so that's what I do now.
Yeah, and that's a really good way to put it, because I understand it can be quite wishy-washy, but it's not. When at the end of the day, what you do and people in your space do, it's not many more important jobs, I'd say, because it genuinely, if the listeners are out there that are really struggling, this is the kind of stuff that you can change your life dramatically. Just get in contact with someone like Liam, and obviously we'll go through your details later, mate. Take us back to the beginning, but obviously not. You don't have to go too deep, but take us, I guess, the first 20 odd years of your life as a human being, and then when it all started to go a spiral out of control in a bad way, I guess, mate.
Yeah, well, I'll give you and the audience some context, right? So my story looks like this. I think it's really relevant, and parts of it, potentially your audience may relate to certain parts of this, but for me, it really kind of the journey kicked off in my mid-20s. Growing up, there were certainly some challenges, which I don't think we'll need to unpack on this platform right now, but like a lot of people, a lot of ups, a lot of downs. But was in a footy culture which was amazing, but it was also, for the longest period of time, sort of a culture and environment where showing your feelings, thinking out loud, being vulnerable, it just wasn't encouraged. And so, over time, I built an identity of myself that was, the party guy, the footy guy. And listen, I got no beef with having a good time. I certainly got no beef with sports. I love it. We share a mutual interest in sports and, in fitness. But the danger comes when you are not also allowing yourself to be human, and you're not allowing yourself to act in alignment with being authentic. And a lot of people just don't know what that looks like. And I didn't when I was, teenager coming into my early 20s. All I really cared about was, girls, having a good time on the weekend, and playing sports and being good at what I did, and sort of having a real ego around that. Challenge with that, Rick, is you sort of get to throughout your mid-20s, and that starts to get chipped away a little bit, and all of a sudden, if you're no longer the gun sportsman, I tried to get originally for me the plan was to get into AFL, didn't work out, and all of a sudden that was taken away from me. My identity of being the party guy, all of a sudden that was just starting to not feel that good. My values were starting to change, yet I was still showing up the same way. So all of a sudden, all these things are adding up and my ego's getting challenged. And when that was stripped away, I was kind of left with nothing else and felt really naked emotionally. I felt like a fraud in a lot of ways. And that was when I started to really flirt with, looking back on it now, was with the first signs of depression. And I was really struggling with it. I just didn't know what to do with that. Didn't know what to do with that feeling. And mate, it all sort of started to culminate on a footy trip. I won't go into the gory details, but having a crack over a 4-day weekend. And I just remember that last day having the paramedics come up to the hotel room just because I'd really destroyed my body. In large part, that was just trying to chase the feeling of being a certain person, the party guy, the whatever. And I felt so horrible. Physically, I was completely shot. And then when the paramedics left, I was all, got the all clear. I was going to be fine. I was just overdone it. I had a moment, mate. And again, I won't give you all the gory details, but I had a moment where I really reconsidered my life. And, it was a scary feeling, and it stuck with me. And then shortly after that, a couple of months later, I was overseas with my brother, and this is a big part of my story. Sustained a head injury, which was actually, wrong place, wrong time. But if we unpack it a little bit more, it was out the front of a bar, and we had a few drinks, and me and my brother we got jumped by a group of guys, and I was king hit overseas, and structurally things cleared up reasonably quickly, but the long-lasting effects of that were pretty dramatic. And so I was diagnosed with post-concussion syndrome. You see a lot of it coming out now, the long-lasting effects of concussions and head traumas with footy guys. And, I sustained a really bad example of post-concussion syndrome, and then that really spiraled the depression and into anxiety. It was really a 3-year process of trying to navigate through that. So, mate, to bring it all back together, that's why, for me, I'm so passionate about the work I do now, because it took me down this rabbit hole. I experienced the depths of despair at times. But then I've gone down this rabbit hole, studied human behaviour, psychology, physiology, all these things that I needed to build myself brick by brick back to feeling good, to feeling and feeling in a way I'd never felt before. Yeah. And so having done that myself in a lot of ways has been amazing. But then now feeling this drive and this purpose to share some of those learnings and ideas along the way, in the hope that maybe something might help or resonate with someone that tunes in.
Yeah, brilliantly. I know you sing to that really well, and I think people can understand exactly. I think there'll be a lot of listeners out there would certainly understand a lot of what you spoke about. Obviously, the concussion, very serious concussion, mind you, is very unique as far as that's not the norm. But everything until that moment, I've got no doubt. I'm listening to it, not in my head. I've got no doubt people just going, yeah, that's me and that's me. So thank you for that. Was brilliantly put. And I've got no doubt, I know you speak very often on stage in front of groups of 100 men and women and young teenagers and athletes and footballers. So I've got no doubt you go deeper into that, and that's the time exactly to go into that. And one-on-one, I can imagine. And having you, because you are such an open book and you are so honest, authentic all the time, it's a very safe place for people. So your clients and the people you mentor on a day-to-day basis, they must feel very safe because there's no judgment there. There's zero judgment, which is obviously huge. Number one. And I know you're really good with a lot of your messages, and I think that's a big one for you. You never judge anyone. The post-concussion stuff, though, I guess we'll spend a minute on all that because, yes, it's massive. It's been massive in the NFL for a decade or two. The AFL now, the Australian Rules Footy League, it's been quite massive the last 5 or 6 years. We've both got no doubt mutual friends that aren't allowed to play footy anymore, and pro footballers that aren't allowed to do any contact sport anymore just for fear of legal retribution and like Paddy McCart and other people that have quite. So take us through the 2 or 3 years, I guess, post the big. I know you're a very successful business owner prior to this coaching role. I guess what's life like with it? And was it the old stuff coming back, or because I think people will not understand it fully.
Mate, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that because I didn't at the time. You know, and a lot of the stuff that's coming out now, front page of the paper, 3 weeks in a row. At one point it was all the head trauma stuff, and it was amazing to see the exposure now. But this all happened for me a bit over 6 years ago now. And at the time, mate, there was not a lot of awareness around once things were cleared up structurally in the brain, had an MRI and things of that nature, you sort of got the out you get, you should be sweet. And I didn't know where to turn either. And so it was really 2 months after that injury where I was attacked overseas where I first had the diagnosis of post-concussion syndrome. So it was like, okay, it's not just me being, a little bitch, it was the ambiguity of it was the worst. Like, why the fuck am I still sort of struggling with these symptoms and emotionally so volatile and just, you mentioned stuff from the past coming up. It really just exacerbated pre-existing challenges. Sort of that I mentioned before, living out of alignment and trying to create an identity that didn't feel right, but I was just chasing an ego trip and things like that. Like all that was just amplified. And then add in the dizziness, the fatigue, the blurry vision, like all these symptoms were really rife. And so I got the diagnosis and I was able to then go, okay, at least I know what this looks like, go down the rabbit hole of seeing other people that struggled with similar challenges and then start to do the rehab. And mate, in a nutshell, for me over what ended up being really a 5-year period, it was a 2.5 to 3 year period was quite gnarly, but ultimately a 5-year journey. It was about 20 grand spent on, rehab and coaches and counselling, neuro rehab, chiros for neck adjustment from the whiplash from the trauma, and all these things came into it. And so you learn a lot when you're kind of having to go through that, and what really feels like a silent battle. And I know a lot of the mental health stuff, and that's why I'm so passionate about it now, is a similar experience for people. Is like, no one else is feeling this. Like that's the paradigm a lot of people have. It's like, I'm feeling this, or I'm feeling a certain way, and I shouldn't. I shouldn't feel like this. I got the missus, or I got the partner that I love, and I got this work, and on paper everything's fine, but I just don't feel right. It's a horrible place to be, and it's hard when you don't know exactly what to do with that. It's really challenging, I found, to work through that when you feel like you should feel another way, but you don't. And that's how I felt for a number of years. Because structurally things were fine. On the surface, I looked okay. I could still crack jokes, still flirt with women, all that rubbish. But inside, emotionally, mentally, and certainly physically as well, I was struggling. So, mate, it was pretty gnarly. But it was really, I reckon, 1.5 years post-injury where I started to get things started to work, right? And that's something where we can unpack a little bit more. But there was some mindset stuff. There's some really practical physiological things that I needed to do in terms of like retraining my vision. Had a big impact on how I felt and some of the symptoms that were showing up for me. Getting back into exercise. So for the longest period of time, I felt like anytime I exercised, which was a big part of who I was, you know, and obviously the work you do, you know how important that is for how you feel. On a daily basis is getting that exercise in, moving the body, and that was stripped away from me. So getting back into that where it wasn't too intense where the heart rate was too high and actually skyrocketed my symptoms, but finding that sweet spot where it was okay. I might not be able to do what I could used to do. I might not be able to do, you know, the big weights workout right now, but it doesn't mean I don't have to do nothing. It doesn't mean I have to do nothing. I can still do, you know, my 10K, low to moderate capacity aerobic zone, and focus on the controllable. And that's a big thing I tell people, right? Is control the controllable. And that gave me a sense of agency, sense of empowerment. Like, fuck, okay, I'm going to do this because I'm going to focus on what I can control. And as soon as you feel like you have a sense of control over a situation, you automatically feel a little bit more empowered. And so for me, that was big. There were things I couldn't control, and it was frustrating, and I wanted to blame everyone, and I was stuck in the past, and I wish this didn't happen. It's like, okay, it did. Control the controllable. And so the aerobic capacity training was a big thing for me, and a few other modalities as well. And then, to be honest, mate, it was a lot of the psychology stuff. So reconnecting to an empowering belief system and a few other things that really became my pillars for rebuilding my mental well-being.
That's it. So you've touched on a lot there, but I can imagine now that is a big part of your, I guess, philosophy and methodology with your clients and the people you mentor so well. So it must be hard as well. The physical stuff's been taken away at its peak. So because when you were talking about your issues post concussion and the dizziness, the fatigue, the chronic physical feeling of nausea and that, so that was a big part. That's a big part of anyone's recovery from depression, anxiety, and different other ailments of the same nature. So you had to find a way to make it work for you.
Yes.
And you did.
Yeah.
So, but how long did that take to find a way to make it work for you from an exercise point of view?
From an exercise point of view, it was probably a couple of years.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
For a bloke who's built his whole... And we're trying to detach from the ego now, aren't we?
No, of course.
But you've got your whole identity around fitness and sport, and you can't do any of it.
And it's such a go-to to feel better. Usually, when you're in a funk, you know, whether you're a young kid or a teenager or an early, it doesn't really matter. Whatever your age, exercise is such a good modality just to at least get the endorphins going, improve the physiology, the nervous system, things like that. Like
so important, mate.
And so when that wasn't an option, that was really tough.
So I guess just on that before we move on. Because we always talk about on these similar shows that we do with exercise and mental health, it is everything. And if you're like you were a great athlete and you still are a great athlete, all that stuff, but that's irrelevant. It's just you weren't able to move for 2 years. So if you're out there and you've never moved before, but you're really having these struggles, just promise yourself 6-minute walks, 7-minute walks.
Yes.
And do it before you even have a chance to think. And then we start to again, like we talk of neuroplasticity, and you talk of it very well, and I love it. I'm fascinated by it because we aren't destined. We can change our destiny tomorrow. I mean, if you get up and move first thing in the morning, it's the key. And you must have really done that well because you had a lot of reasons, like you said, to not do anything. But you had to really say what works for me.
Yeah, and here's the thing, Rick, as well. Mate, there were some days where I threw in the towel, you know, and there were some days where it was like, just, what's the point? You know, and we spoke before about comparing to other people and, you know, like that was a big thing for me. So it was kind of, for me, it was like, what's the point of going for a 6-minute walk? It's not going to change my life. Fuck it. Like that was the psychology that I was trapped in. And it was really hard to escape from, particularly when you go out for that 6-minute walk and you see someone who's just, you know, banging out a 2-3 hour ride, or you see your mates doing really well in their sports or whatever it might be. And I wasn't quite there at that stage in my journey, and that was really frustrating. So it's super easy to stay stagnant, and that's very biological experience for us humans, is to kind of stay in what feels safe. You know, we're wired for safety and survival. We're not wired for happiness and success and things of that nature. We kind of have to curate that as best we can. And so I was stuck. I just want to highlight that it didn't come easy, and it wasn't linear either.
Never.
That's
never
big.
Is,
It was 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, but then 4 steps forward. Like it was over a long enough timeline. That's how you win. Like that is how you make progress in business, in your money, in life, and certainly in your emotional and mental stability. I've found, right? It's not linear, but if you do the fundamentals, the 6-minute walk, daily over a long enough period of time, man, neuroplasticity you touched on was my favorite word I learned in my mid-20s. We are literally designed to adapt and to grow. Like that's what makes us humans, the apex predator. And that sounds very geeky, but if you just sit with that for a second, it's kind of what I want people to really consider. Because you can Google, you can YouTube, you can search how to feel better, how to work through mental health challenges. There's a lot of modalities and options out there, and they're all worth exploring, and then exploring with curiosity and finding what works for you. But ultimately, people will fall short if they don't fundamentally believe that they can change, right? That mental health trap is the lack of hopefulness that your future can get better. That's where certainly where I was stuck. So understanding neuroplasticity, even epigenetics, these concepts which sound, if you keep it simple, Rick, Liam, whoever's tuning in, we're all designed to adapt and to grow. And it might not be tomorrow. Your destination might not change overnight, but you can change direction in an instant. And that belief system is everything. The modalities, the tangible stuff, the tips and tricks, it's all useful. Mm-hmm. And we'll unpack that if we've got the time. But it's the belief system that I can and will get better. I can, and that might be something like a tangible skill. Like right now, in my example, I can't run 10 kilometers because my symptoms flare and I just break down. I can't do that. But I can. And here I am running, doing Ironmans and of the like, which is crazy. So the tangible side of things is cool, but the kind of the abstract stuff as well. So how you feel on a daily basis. People wake up and they're consistently flat or fatigued or scared or nervous or anxious or depressed, and that's all they know. Their nervous system has been reconditioned that way from weeks, months, potentially years of being that way. Okay. Know that too can improve. It's not just a pat on the back. It's not a motivational speech. It's no, I'm not someone special because I've been able to improve how I felt. It's the belief system that you can improve. You start there. I promise you, in 3-4 weeks, 3-4 months, however long it takes, your life can be dramatically different.
It's brilliantly put, and we're both so passionate about that, and it doesn't have to be the way it's always been. And that's so true, and the way you put it is great. You can't expect it to happen overnight, and it's not even going to be instant. It's going to take a long time. But again, you take the little wins. Like if you think there's no point, believe me, there's two of us here telling you there is every point, and there is every reason to start to change. And the neurotransmitters throughout the next day, if you do so. Like, forget about anyone else. It's about you, and about how are you going to get squeeze every inch out of your next day, and Liam squeeze every inch out of every day. But if you feel like rubbish for 6 weeks, so I'm sure, like you said, it's not linear, up and down, 4 steps forward, 5 steps back. But when you did start to move and start to do things, the quality of your day, the productivity of your day was always going to be better. And you do it. You do really help people with that really well. I wanted to, like the pillars of mental well-being and stuff. Like, if there's someone listening to that, we've spoken about exercise so much. We'll get onto a bit of your journey with the triathlon stuff. Is there anything else that they can really work on and take it day-to-day type stuff? Yeah,
so I'm really big on the tangible stuff too. So I think it's important to have context. So that belief system and for me is the best place to start. But I can give people 5 pillars that I've found really useful. And the important caveat here, Rick, if I may, is I'm just one guy. I'm just one dude. I haven't got all the fucking answers. I'm here sharing my journey, and in the hope that someone can just take a couple little bits and pieces, filter it through their own sort of system, and then integrate what's going to work for them. Okay, there's all kinds of ways to go about anything, and certainly when it comes to boosting how we feel mentally, emotionally, and everything in between, there's a number of ways to go. But for me, there was 5 big ones. If I reflect back on it, to something to for people to consider. The first is the belief system, like I said, and for me there was a few things. Humans are the ultimate adaptation machine. I'd repeat that to myself, to other people, my friends, my family, my partner, at all times.
I love that one. I absolutely love it.
Humans are the ultimate adaptation machine. I'll tell you why I love that, Rick. It's not about me looking in the mirror saying, I'm better right now, And look, that serves its purpose too. That's a whole other conversation. But this is, whether you like it or not, whether you agree or not, whether it makes you feel happy right now or not, is besides the point. Humans are the ultimate adaptation machine. Darwin was often misquoted for saying it's the strongest of the species that survive, but he actually said it's not the strongest nor the most intelligent, but rather the most adaptive to change that will survive, and that's why humans are the apex predator, right? So I find that really fucking empowering. So I started to really buy into that and then integrate that into my own life and go, okay, like I said, it might not be tomorrow, but over time I can adapt and grow and change and evolve beyond imagination. And it's not rah-rah, it's not motivation, hyperbole. That's facts. So just knowing that alone should help people just feel a little bit more confident. Okay, I can get better, I can improve my running, I can get fitter, I can get healthier, and I can certainly boost my mental well-being and my narrative of myself. Okay, so that's the first thing. I also built a belief system around, hey, I am far more interested in how I feel about myself than how others feel about me. And dude, I still struggle with this a little bit, but I reckon this is big for people, particularly in a social media world, which kind of amplifies this human need for context of like, how do I fit in the world? Where do I belong? Who am I? Mate, it's a rabbit hole to go down. But that was
be a whole other episode.
Mate. But I struggled with that for a while.
Series on that one.
I struggled with that for a while. But part of my belief system was, okay, I'm far more interested in how I feel about myself than how others feel about me. So I started making decisions in accordance with that. Because when I didn't, that's what led me to really starting to emotionally, mentally spiral out of control. So, mate, we could go down that rabbit hole heaps, but the belief system's the first place to start. Get an empowering belief system, and it can be built. And knowing that it can be built is really important. The second thing is physiology, which I know you're huge on. You know, we could geek out for hours about all the different ways to optimize our neurochemistry and things of that nature. But, you know, brain chemistry is the name of the game. When it comes to what's the meaning of life, I love those abstract conversations, and maybe over a glass of wine we could sort of riff on a few ideas one time, mate. But brain chemistry is what we're after. It's, you know, feeling a certain way. And the more you can get your physiology right, it's just the best place to start. It's the lowest hanging fruit. So, you know, people tuning into this show, I imagine, are already aware of that, of how important movement is. But it's one of three things: movement and exercise, the right rest and sleep, and then nutrition and diet, right? They're the three pillars that I fell back on, which, you know, for anyone struggling in any capacity, it's really the best place to start because it's so tangible. Get your food right, prioritize your sleep and your rest, and move your body. And it is insane how much of an impact that will have over time as your physiology improves. Seen a lot of science coming out lately, and certainly not a direct quote, but just something to consider. A lot of science coming out at the moment around anxiety and some of the largest contributors, and diet just keeps coming up. So what you're putting into your body. So just food for thought for people that are struggling. Not only can you improve your physiology by getting those three things right, but the sense of agency you have and the identity, right? The empowering identity that comes from I'm choosing, right, to do these things that are good for me. That's empowering. So that was a big one for me. And then just a couple others really quick was connection. So living in alignment with your values, and connection's big for people, almost all people. You know, COVID, if anything's really highlighted this isolation and loneliness pandemic. You know, people talk about the pandemic right now, which is one piece, but it's really in large part a pandemic of loneliness that's been showcased. Been around for a while, but it's really been showcased in the last couple of years. So connection's huge. You know, so the opportunity for even just me and you having this chance to be here in the flesh, to have a conversation, to have an important conversation, rather than just, hey, go and da-da-da and see you later. Deep, true connection, fuck, mate, that helps a lot. So for me, that was huge as well. And then the final piece for people to consider is to intentionally cultivate joy in our lives. I'm all about chasing the business and even just going super deep on the personal growth journey and all that stuff. Amazing. Yeah. And it serves its purpose to feeling good. But mate, if you look at your calendar over the last 6 months and you haven't got a pretty substantial amount of like joyful experiences prioritized, my guess is you're probably finding yourself in a bit of a funk right now. And that's a big piece I want people to consider too. Whether it's with your partner, your friends, your family, or by yourself, what brings you joy? If you don't know, start there. Just take time to audit that. You know, for me, it's going to the movies. I love going to the movies, awesome, right? I love listening to hip-hop, rap music, and understanding the poetry and the storytelling in it. So what is it for you that's going to bring you genuine joy and lean into that?
That's really cool. And I've listened to a lot of your stuff, obviously, the last couple of weeks, and I know you are. I love your diversity. I love that you've got lots of different passions and interests, and the cultivation of joy is really important. Do stuff that makes you happy, and be around people that make you happy. So that speaks to the last 2 points, the connection And I know you've spoken, well, not to negative, but just be very aware of who's around you and what they. But that we don't have to go into that. But yeah, just what effects are they having on you as well? So I think really good. And just to go over that with reverse back a couple of bits, like the empowerment and stuff is really important, and just to amplify to people that the nutrition and the sleep and the movement, we talk about movement all the time, it's not going to feel natural straight away. So we are wired for comfort, as you said, and we're wired to be safe, and the comfortable thing that our brain is going to tell us is to say, start tomorrow, or just have that, just eat that, whatever, and overeat again. Just overeat like you've done the last 35 years, and then you can start tomorrow, because that's the comfortable way. But to change that brain chemistry is to start. And wherever it means writing it down, like we spoke about tangibility, we write it down about this is what we're going to do and this is what we did today. We did this today. You used the word order, which was great. I did an order to myself today, and I did all this stuff, and I felt good today, and I slept for 7.5 hours tonight, and I had 3 litres of water. If you do that every day, all of a sudden stuff starts to change. So really, really, real powerful tips. That's monstrous. And I guess if you want to rewind that and do the last 10 minutes, listeners, I really would recommend, because I was just listening and just loving every second of Liam's chat. With that, mate, was there anything you did, you looking back that now, obviously in a past tense, I know you're still doing it today, of course, and it's going to be every day. Like, it's the life's not, it's not all rainbows and lollipops. So for anybody, let's be honest. Was there anything when you started doing like the easy jogs or whatever it may be, the nutrition, the sleep, was there any way you just, you said control the controllables, but was there anything you had in mind? Were you writing anything down? Did you have a goal that just kind of evolved? It just naturally evolved?
Mate, that's a very good question, and I can tell you what worked for me. I don't know if it's the right or wrong answer, but it's something to consider for people, right? I had a goal. There's something, and the goal, I'd hit my goal because, mate, how good does it feel when you set an objective and you hit the objective? Now, the danger comes when you're banking your future happiness on that outcome, and then the outcome comes, and you get that momentary boost of dopamine, but we've all been there. It doesn't last very long. No. So if you're waiting to feel good until you get the outcome, that's a terrible place to be operating from. But there's something intrinsically rewarding about being in pursuit of a worthwhile goal. And so for me, my fitness journey, in terms of rebuilding it, I had very set checkpoints. A lot of it was around running, because for me, sort of staying in that heart rate zone was huge, as opposed to weight training, which sort of flared at my neck, and all my head issues, symptoms would flare up. So I had some running goals that I'd build up. And it was, I think, 3 years after the injury that I completed a half marathon. So I did a half marathon. It was actually my first time I'd done it, and I did it in a pretty solid time too, with some solid training beforehand. So that was one that I remember clearly was an objective that I'd had, and it just felt really good to train towards that. And the reason I say having a goal helped was, as we've touched on a few times now in this chat, we are wired to conserve calories. So, and this is something I want to highlight, if I may, sort of go off on a little tangent again. I think it's really useful. A lot of the work I do now, like I said, is around emotional, mental well-being, coaching and things like that, but it's also around helping people get from A to B, like to reach some sort of goal of some sorts, right? And in large part, there's really 2 things that I see get in the way when people are trying to go after something. So let's say it's a fitness journey. It's the comparison game. So they start moving and shaking and putting things in place, going for runs, lifting weights, whatever it is. And there's always going to be someone that's fitter, stronger, faster. And they see that and they go, fuck. As a human, we're trying to answer this question, who am I, where do I belong? They take that context and go, well, I belong down here. Fuck it, I don't feel very empowered. You stop doing the work. So that's one piece, is the comparison game. And the second one is, at the time you make a decision to do something, like you set a goal, you're excited. Man, we could set some stuff right now and be like up and about. We've got our body is filled with the chemistry that feels excitatory, right? What happens though when it comes 2 days time from now and you said you were going to go for a run at 5 a.m, or you're going to lift those weights, or you're going to go for that walk, or you were going to, do that thing that's going to make you feel better? That time comes around. You don't feel like it anymore. You're tired, you're fatigued. It's how you interpret that feeling. You're not always going to feel that excitatory dopamine release, right? It's not going to happen. And if you're waiting on that feeling to do what you said you would do, you're in trouble. So it's understanding that feeling. And that's kind of what I got pretty good at, was I've got my goal. We've spoken a lot about decision fatigue. I know you're really big on that. I've got my goal. I don't have to overthink it. I just got to turn up and get it done. But I also now know that I'm not always, like, there's going to be days where I genuinely don't feel like it. And bar some sort of serious injury or some other concern that maybe I need to reconsider, I need to turn up and I will feel better for doing the work. And so I think that's where a lot of people fall down, is that they misunderstand what that feeling means. I don't feel like it anymore. Maybe this goal isn't that important to me. Maybe I'm not capable of it. Just, I can't be fucked. Whatever it is. No, it's just that your body is trying to keep you safe and conserve calories. That's why there's friction there. So I was able to remember that most of the time and sort of show up. So yeah, roundabout way of sort of answering your question there. Sorry, Rick.
No,
but
it's fucking brilliant. It's
being
awesome.
able to have that goal, understanding what those feelings are when they come up en route to that goal and being able to maneuver through that is really big. Mm-hmm. That helped tremendously, because all of a sudden you go from 5K, 10K to the half marathon I mentioned. And, I went back and played football this year, albeit a couple of games, put on a clinic, mind you. But, after 4 or 5 years away, just obviously with the head trauma stuff, to now obviously going to Ironmans that I'm doing, and I'll probably come last, but I'll get it done, and that's exciting.
It's brilliant and great tips, because we always talk about not relying on motivation. It just has to be hardwired, and how empowering is that to say, okay, I'm not going to be filled with dopamine and excitable hormones and neurotransmitters because it's 5 a.m, but I'm going to get it done. And that's very, very, very empowering. And I tell you what, once you start doing this for months and years on end, it just changes.
Yeah.
So you're not the same person that you were 3 years ago. But our whole life is about, do we want to be the same? But we don't. We want to be able to change. Mm-hmm. Unless every centimetre of your life is perfect, or which hopefully it is, but you want to continue to grow and adapt and be a better version of yourself. Give me some of your big tips on empowerment, mindset, because I've got no doubt that you are in this space daily. So some of your big tips on that.
Mate, this is the real juice of a lot of the work that I do and what I'm really passionate about. And again, mate, never claim to have all the answers, but if I can say a couple of things that land with people, then you beauty. We've played our role today. So for me, language is the best place to start, right? So something super tangible that people can use. Find language stems. Now, what I mean by that is this. Something that I always fall back on, we've touched on a couple of times already. Humans are the ultimate adaptation machine. I will say that out loud. I am literally trying to brainwash myself. I'm trying to recondition my nervous system, my belief system, unpack old limiting. I'm trying to really subscribe to that so deeply at every opportunity that it becomes second nature. So when I'm struggling, when I'm feeling fatigued, when I'm doubting myself, which never really comes up, I can fall back on that. So that's just one thing. Humans are the ultimate adaptation machine. Say it at all times.
Love it.
Language is a two-way street to mood, right? So often we'll see people sort of, I'll give you a quick little analogy. So let's say I see you in the morning tomorrow, Rick, and you've slept well, you've had a great night, you get an email with great news for the business, you've had your coffee up and about, and I ask how you're going. You're probably going to tell me you're up and about and you're feeling good. Let's say the reverse of that happens, shit night's sleep, you have an argument with your partner, you haven't had your coffee, you haven't had your workout, you're just feeling physiologically a bit off. How you going, Rick? You might be able to show up a certain way potentially. I know you've got a great attitude, but odds are you're going to probably say something more along the lines of a bit flat, or I'm tired, I'm this, whatever. So people seem to understand that language reflects mood, but we can direct our mood with language. So to bring it all together, language stems. So having things that you find empowering and saying them at all opportunities is really empowering to actually go the other way to impact mood. Another thing for me is I'm the kind of person that, fill in the blank. Who the fuck am I? Who am I to tell you how to live your life? But whatever's important for you, complete that sentence. I'm the kind of person that. I'm the kind of person that always does what I say I'll do. I'm the kind of person that sets my fitness goals and I live into them. I'm the kind of person that lives with authenticity, and I'm the kind of person that shows up in line with my own values, not other people's. Whatever's important for you. That can be a process in and of itself to identify that.
I'll stop. That is absolutely brilliant. It also works the reverse with belief system though. I've always been. I've never been a morning person. I've always been a chocolate. You're probably going to touch on this, but we can change that just by changing language. Mm-hmm. I've always been lazy. I've always been overweight. I've always been whatever. Why? Why can't we change?
Yeah.
It's bullshit.
Yeah.
So, brilliant. And I don't talk about language too much. So really, really, really brilliant. And it does work both ways. So
It really does.
I'm sorry for interjecting. Keep going.
No, mate. That's so powerfully true. And I mean, I catch myself out sometimes. But I guess for people, the takeaway is this: know how important language is, and have some things that you can say to other people, and certainly to yourself. I journal daily. That will go a long way to feeling really empowered. Another thing as well is to recognise that what gets prioritised gets done, and you can literally build evidence and a track record of performance in the areas important to you. So essentially, it's a roundabout way of saying competence is going to give you a sense of confidence. Now, Rick, odds are, mate, you feel pretty good about your ability to perform, on the track. You can run pretty well. You've spent however many years, in this space. You've got a level of competence and a track record that's helped you feel confident in that area. So whilst I'm really big on starting with beliefs, an easy way to kind of dive into that belief loop is to actually get better and prioritize what's important to you. So if something's not important to you, the other caveat here is, who cares? If someone's doing something and like, oh, maybe I should do that, just let that go. But whether it's your fitness, your business, your career, relationship, things that are important to you, prioritize it. So we mentioned the Ironman. Sort of joked a couple of times about how I'm certainly not going to win, but I will get it done. I've been training for it for 6 months. Mate, it is the number one priority in my life right now, and that'll change. I'll get it done. I'll get fitness and that sort of keeping some sort of routine is important, but that might fluctuate a bit after the event. But right now, I know that needs to be a priority because then it will get done, and then that consistency and that track record gives me a sense of empowerment. Right?
Brilliant.
So for people, take away. If you want to feel a sense of empowerment, build a track record that supports your belief that you are whatever you want to feel. Okay, so that's really big.
Magnificent.
I guess maybe the final piece is the law of osmosis. So what you surround yourself with, right? And there's 3 things that I consider are worth auditing and doing what you can to put yourself to get around the best version of these. The first is people, the second is ideas, and the third is places. So right now I'm in an amazing place with an amazing person.
Gee, you keep going. This is fucking marvelous.
Yeah, and bouncing off what I think are some great ideas and important conversations to be had. So osmosis. So if you're feeling less than empowered, how often are you around people that are empowering? How often are you learning, listening, reading, studying ideas that are empowering? How often are you in places that are inspiring, in nature, time with friends and novelty and doing new things and adventure? Like places, people and ideas, you want to get around as much as you can, because through osmosis, you will naturally start to integrate that into who you are. That's how you start to feel empowered as well.
Mate, that is absolute gold. Like, if you could just repeat that over and over, that last part especially, how when you think back, if you have been weeks or months without feeling empowered, look back on, you say your journal, look back on all that, and what is it? What really?
Yeah.
What's happened? What have I not? I haven't been anywhere. I've been just doing the same old stuff every day. You spoke to your 70.3. Tell me about lessons learned from that, and it's a very different space.
Yep.
So tell me all about the 70.3 and some of the big tips and tricks that you've found from that.
Yeah, mate, you have to have me back on once I've done it, and I can give you the horror stories of how challenging it was. But
100%.
So I've been training for about 6 months now for this goal, and there's a few tangible lessons that I've taken away that I think probably apply to really any arena of life. The first is the importance of a plan, which we've touched on already. So having a clear objective and a clear plan is so important. It takes away the decision-making fatigue. You don't have to overthink or doubt. You've made your objective, you've made your plan, you just got to show up and get it done. Okay, it's when people start trying to overthink or reinvent the wheel, you start going in a million different directions. Whereas having my goal, having a set training plan, all I got to do is turn up and get it done. So that's been really important. Having a clear plan gets you a long way. Second thing I've learned is that we all have a ceiling on what we think is capable for ourselves. Mate, I can't tell you my language was so poor 6 months ago, funnily enough, around my ability to swim. Okay? I remember, look, funny story if you've got the time, I remember
Going anywhere, mate.
I remember setting myself the goal. All right, I'm going to go train. Happy days. Never been much of a swimmer, but fuck, how hard can it be? Go down the ocean with my partner, and I remember telling her, listen, I'm just going to go swim out to the pier and back. It's maybe 500 meters. Let's see how we go. She's like, I'll come with you. I'm like, yeah, just be careful. I don't want you to drown. I was worried for her. So like, because she's very competitive. Yeah, it's a whole other thing. So I was like, just stay in the shallow end, just make sure you don't do too much, mate. I swam about 40 meters, and then my heart rate was through the roof. My arms were heavy. I had a panic attack. I'm like, I couldn't comprehend how people can glide through the water, the ocean in particular when there's waves. Meanwhile, my partner just saw it. She was having a great time. So the point is, the narrative that came up for me over time, particularly as I started training, was I'm not a swimmer, right? It was, I can't swim. Yeah, I'm a pretty good runner. I can push my body and get pretty good on the run. I can ride if I get good at it. I won't be able to swim. It's not so there was a ceiling I had on what was possible for me. And mate, I'm still struggling with that. I'm still trying to unpack that a bit. But over time, you can chip away. So the lesson was, we all have ceilings. So if there's something that you're constantly running up against, if it's the same old pattern, whether it's with your money, with relationships is a big one, career, and certainly with your level of happiness. There was a period of time where things are going great, but then I'd fall back into some sort of slump, right? And a lot of people relate to that. It's like, I'm up and about, and then I'm feeling flat again. Start the process of trying to understand what those limiting beliefs are. So that's the second lesson. We all have this limiting beliefs system and a ceiling of what we think is possible, and that will keep us captive until we're able to kind of unpack and wrestle that back a bit. So that was big. The third lesson was how important consistency is, which I know you're huge on and do a lot of great work with your customers and your community with runners. So consistency is huge. As soon as you drop off, the activation energy required to get started again is hard. It's like that law of inertia, right? So an object in motion tends to stay in motion, object at rest tends to stay in rest. Mate,
keep the ball rolling, mate.
Keep the ball rolling. So look, there were a few of the big lessons that I really took away, and I guess the fourth one we've already touched on it, was just holy shit, how much we can grow physically and mentally beyond what we can even fathom. Mate, I am far from a good swimmer, terrible potentially. I can swim a couple of K in the lap pool now, and just 6 months ago I couldn't swim 60 meters. I'm not exaggerating. So we can grow far beyond we can't even conceptualize where we can get to.
Nah, and that's the thing, you're talking about, you're doing this half Ironman and this, but it was only 6 months ago you couldn't swim a lap of a pool. So that is a great metaphor for everything we've spoken about today. Not just this, like you touched on business or finance or whatever, whatever it may be. What we're talking about, we're talking about, especially what you do with your guys, is happiness is the most important thing in the world.
100.
But you could use these learnings for anything in life. You might be the happiest person on earth, but you want to just get better at something, golf, business, whatever. Nothing to do with anything we've spoken about, whatever. And you still take this methodology because it will work. Yeah. And everything you've spoke of is amazing. And the consistency factor to keep the ball rolling, you're brilliant on that. It's massive. And look where you are now. Tell us about, I guess, just to finish off today, because we definitely will get you back on. I got the feeling we'll be doing a few.
I think so,
whether
mate.
it's podcasts or YouTube, just Instagram stories, whatever it makes together. Because again, very much in alignment with what we do. I guess day to day at the moment, mate. I know you're on stage. You talk to footy clubs, and we'll put all the details in the show notes, of course. And I know there's a lot of football and football clubs involved with our show. How are you day to day? Day to day, I guess your big ambitions and goals for the future, and then I guess finally just where we can find you, of course in our show notes, but where the listeners can find you straight away.
Yeah, of course, mate. So, few things on the day to day. AMs and PMs, you got to get your routine sorted, and you don't have to follow mine, but a massive thing for people, if you haven't got your AM and PM routine dialed in, you'll just find that the middle of the day just fluctuates so much. But if you can control that, the start and the end, again, goes a long way to feeling empowered. So for me, it looks like this. Every morning, mate, bar none. Do not miss a day. And it's not because I'm special, it's just because this is important to me. And it helps me feel a certain way. And how I feel about myself is my North Star, right? I want to feel good about myself in a very healthy way. So I wake up, I have a cold shower. Haven't missed for 2 years.
How many minutes?
I do 4 to 5.
That's obviously something that you've adapted.
Yeah, very much so, mate.
You stay 5 minutes.
It started off with 15-minute hot shower and then chuck the cold on the legs for 10 seconds and build up from there. And now it's at a point where it's, similar to training, right? With exercise, sometimes it starts like a bit of a chore. Oh, I want to lose weight or I want to feel a certain way, and it's just hard work. But then a year goes by and you feel worse when you don't do it, right?
So do you?
I find that with cold showers now.
I love it. The Wim Hof stuff and all that's obviously very famous. Do you have a warm shower first?
I don't.
So you just get straight in.
Yeah.
And this is pre-train or post-train?
This is
Irrelevant. So you train first usually.
I usually have the shower first. I usually have two. So I have my cold shower first.
Then train.
And then I will meditate.
How long for?
5 to 10 minutes.
Sorry, I'm getting ahead.
No, for sure, yeah. No. 5-10 minutes. So for me, it's not about floating away to the Himalayas. It's about the routine and consistency and just being able to keep my nervous system as calm as possible. So I meditate, which then allows me to then journal for 5 to 10 minutes. And again, you don't have to do this, but I've just find this really useful for me. So cold shower, up and about, meditate for 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, journal for 5-10 minutes, and that could be what I'm grateful for, could be my plan for the day, could be how I want to show up for the day, could be lessons learned from the day before, because I'm all about trying to, continually, enhance what I know to be true of myself in the world so that I can feel more empowered and then potentially, hopefully, help other people too. So could be whatever, but I journal for 10 minutes, then I go train. So depending on whatever day it is, could be at the moment, it could be this morning, for example, was an hour in the pool, did 2K in the pool over different intervals, and then into half-hour run with a couple of different intervals in that as well, like some speed stuff too. So that was today. Tomorrow's an hour and a half ride. So it'll vary, but then it'll be train. Then it'll come back to my house, stretch, another cold shower, and then kind of whatever I need to do for the day.
Awesome.
Okay, PM, it looks like I do a little stretch session for 10 minutes. Then I will meditate for 5 minutes, even a couple of minutes. For me, it's just about getting some deep breaths in before I go to bed. Have a little potion for me, which is a bit of GABA concentrate and lion's mane and some chamomile tea. And all electronics off at least half an hour before bed. So that for me is really important. So that's my PM, and then really my way of prioritising sleep. Throughout the day, at the moment, it might look. My ideal, it varies, as you know. Like if you're running a business, it can get. It can vary significantly, but on an average day, it might look like doing a piece of content in the morning. So whether it's a podcast or just creating something for YouTube, whatever it might be, then I might do a one-on-one call with someone. So I do some coaching stuff one-on-one, which I'm really passionate about. Get really that more intimate opportunity to work with people. And then in the afternoon, I might do another stretch session, or I might do another one-on-one, or I might facilitate a program. But I'm also reading, listening, and studying a lot as well. So the middle of the day varies. But going back to that point I made earlier, the AM and the PM for me is really important. So hopefully that answers your question a bit.
Great advice. That's really good advice.
And mate, for the future, this is a new space for me. We were talking off air before about, my journey. Spent 11 years in travel, sort of finished up in that industry, and now carving out a career as a speaker, and of course as a business around that as well. But at the same time, mate, it's really just driven by just wanting to help people. Been through my own journey. Said it a number of times already. I know how bad it can get, but I know how fucking good it can get as well. And it's easy to lose that when you're in the thick of it. It's really easy to forget that. It's really easy to fall short on your goals and build this self-limiting narrative. Like all that stuff I'm passionate about. I don't have all the answers, but I'm passionate about. And so a lot of what I want to do moving forward is continually trying to unpack that, studying more about human behavior so we can integrate the science into these more kind of abstract ideas, and then help other people, guys, girls, young, old, everyone in between, to live a more empowering life, to enjoy life. You touched on it as well, Rick. The happiness is the name of the game. It's brain chemistry. It's feeling good. So those answers might evolve over time. And so right now I've shared a couple of ideas today, which hopefully are useful. But the plan for the future, mate, is just to connect with as many people as I can through platforms like this. Of course, the work I do, in front of different groups, and then the one-on-one coaching stuff if anyone's interested.
Super powerful tips. The morning and PM stuff is brilliant. And again, you're not trying to preach. You're not saying this is how you got to do it. This all works for you, but really it does align with everything we talk about anyway. So everything you're talking about, I think a lot of our listeners, no matter what space they're in, again, I'm massive on that. Doesn't matter what space or field you're in, will listen to that and respect that and try, hopefully, if not all of them, a few of them, and go, this really works for me. Journaling, meditating, cold showers, daily movement. Okay, he's not trying to be an Olympian, but just continue to change his physiology and biomechanics and get better at swimming, riding, running. He's got an objective. He's going to do it in a few months, and we'll definitely get Liam back on the show. Authentic, honest, raw, very intelligent and motivating. Liam O'Donnell, tell us where that we can find you.
So on all the main, social channels on the interweb out there, I suppose. On YouTube, you can just search Liam O'Donnell. I should come up. Braintainment, you mentioned at the start. Appreciate that, mate. It's a podcast that I do. Just had you on recently as well, so that episode will air shortly. It should be exciting, but I've had a whole range of guests on there every so often. It might just be a quick power hour, sharing some ideas out loud that hopefully people resonate with. So Braintainment on Apple and Spotify, and also do the video platform on YouTube. So they're the best places. I'm on Instagram at liamodonnell.ig. So they're the best places to find me. I've also got a website, liamodonnell.com.au. And guys, if you've got any questions, anyone from your audience that wants to learn more, or just connect, very driven by human connection. It's my highest value. So if anyone just wants to start up a conversation, feel free to reach out. And I certainly don't have all the answers and never claim to, but if something that I've said has resonate in some way, or you just want to bounce something off me or Rick or whoever it might be, then would love to get in touch.
Brilliant, mate. And of course, Liam's always available just for chats, organic chats. And if you are maybe in a space that you don't want to be in as far as mentally or emotionally, then Liam's always there to help as well. And he's great with the one-on-one coaching, or if you are after a speaker, he is the king. So footy clubs, sporting clubs in general, community groups, business groups, corporate groups, he's fantastic. So I thank you for your time today, brother. You've got all your handles there. We'll connect them to the show notes. Continue to be great. What's on for the next few hours, great man? You're just going to launch into the evening?
I think so, mate. It's been a big day. So I will. I've actually got a call at 7 that I'll sort of make myself available for, which is actually a group of guys that I connect with on a regular basis, just to continue my own journey. So it's a good group of guys, bit of banter. So it's really, really fun and enjoyable. But at the same time, we're all there to learn and grow and encourage vulnerability as well. So that's a call that I'll take part in, and then, mate, not long after that, I'll slide into my PM routine.
I love the PM routine, and I love that we're going to finish with that kind of stuff. Learning, vulnerability, and having fun, and more importantly, great man, connecting. Thanks, Liam O'Donnell. Until next time, brother, that's been Runners Radio.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Good work, mate.
Great work.